Buenos dias, Alistair, and thank you for joining us today at the Entrepreneurs Next Door podcast. Today, I am very excited to introduce Alastair Gauld, CEO of Flyte. Welcome, Alistair.
Thank you for having me.
So, Alistair, my first question is always about how you ended up running this business. Was running a business something you always wanted to do since your school days?
It's an interesting one, actually. The school days, that's a long time ago. So I think it's difficult to say because you look back on it with the mindset you have today. If I thought how I was when I was 15 years old, I would probably have to lean more towards no. And the reason for that was because when I was at school, I wasn't probably the most academic. And my interests were very much focused around design. So out of all the courses, all the education that I had, it was the kind of design and product design side of things that interest me. And the computing side did as well. And I think back 15, 20 years ago when I was at school, the technology landscape was totally different to what we have today. So when I looked at product design, it was very much physical products. So if I thought about running my business, if I thought how my career was going to progress through that end of the world, I feel the challenges ahead would have been far greater because when you take physical products, you're either going and heading into a large firm where you're going to be a designer within there. If you want to go start yourself, you're creating a product and trying to sell it. So I wasn't really thinking too much about that side of things. I went up to Dundee to do product design engineering and spent 4 years up there. And then I ultimately ended up heading into industrial design once I left uni.
What problem did you want to solve in the early days when you established the business? What was the original intent? What problem were you solving?
For businesses in terms of why
Yes,
we started it
yes.
up. So often or not with businesses, the processes are often the part that are outdated. It's often the part that's stopping businesses scale. And more often or not, what we do is we see businesses that have, for instance, started with a fantastic a spreadsheet. It's been a great tool, a very powerful tool within the business. But what's actually happened is the business has grown past it. And actually, that spreadsheet, for instance, is becoming a hindrance in terms of it's actually outdated, duplicating data across the business, people misinformation and all that things. So what we try and do is we come in, we understand the problem with the users. Goes back to my product design days where you're actually sitting and understanding the need, and then looking at the toolbox that we have, which is the Microsoft Power Platform, and seeing how do we solve that problem. So how do we save a business X amount of time by automating a process? How do we cons bring all the data points together so there's no duplication of data across the business? And it is very much at trying to remove bottlenecks within business processes.
Brilliant. Has Was this always the plan, or has this evolved over time? Because sometimes when you set up a business, what it is today to what the original intent was, you look at the industry, how things, the trends, and then it evolves into something else.
I mean, this sector is the technology sector at the moment is a not a challenging, tons of opportunity there, but it's very fluid. It's changing all the
Yes.
time. And even with the Microsoft stuff, when I came into the business in its old form in 2019, the Power Platform was quite rudimental that you could do certain things, and even how that's changed over the course of kind of 5 or 6 years is incredible. And then obviously we've got AI in the table as well. I think realistically it started looking at SharePoint in its infancy. And really, it was people who were trying to take stuff onto the cloud. So I've got an on-prem server. I've got data that's outdated. How do we get it onto SharePoint? And the way that SharePoint worked gave us a platform where we were able to set it up correctly for them. And actually, that's where the conversation stems from. How do we automate this? Okay, great. I put this bit of data into the cloud. What next for it? Rather than just sitting there as a static entity that it did on a server for many, many years. So it's kind of evolved. So the original idea was always there, but it's kind of evolved into what it is today. And even with AI, it's ultimately just another tool in the toolbox of how we gain efficiencies and improvements within businesses.
Yes. Touching upon AI a little bit, I mean, I am an AI user, and every month I use it more and more and more. I mean, how much I've used it in the past 3 months compared to the past year
Yep.
is night and day. How does it affect your business? Obviously, you have AI and the interaction with your clients, but also your recruitment needs. I mean, is AI helping you not to recruit as many people as you originally intended?
So if we look at the client side of things first, the challenges we face there is the noise that exists around AI. AI is a very powerful tool and it's a great, and I use it day to day myself and I love it. The challenges we face with some of the businesses is they hear so much about AI that they feel if they don't implement it within a business, they're behind. And that's where sometimes they come to us and they don't necessarily know the business need for it. They just need to put it into place. And that's where we have to kind of go back to the drawing board and kind of understand how do they work? What's their process like? Where could it actually add value to the business? Because, like anything, if we just stick it on top of something and hope it works for a month or so, and then people go away from it because it just doesn't fit into their workflow. So yes, that's the challenging part. In terms of recruitment, it's the recruitment side of things in the Power Platform, especially in the Microsoft space, has always been a bit challenging. Not because there's a lack of people there, it's because often or not, the route to getting into the Power Platform is a bit different. So often or not, a lot of people who come to us with the expertise around it are self-taught. And we see this with AI as well. It's a lot of people who have had core fundamental development skill sets, skill sets who are learning as they go in some areas. So realistically, what actually happens there is the type of people that we look for are the people who are continually learning, who want to continue to learn, and who are able to try and keep up with the rate of change that is coming from the sector at the moment.
Mhm.
And that's where those kind of challenges are. It's like, okay, you have that understanding, you have that skill set today, but what's going to be the need from everything in about a year's time? Especially with things like vibe coding coming along, and which again is a great tool, but actually working that into processes, working that into businesses with the skill sets still takes a wee bit of work in some areas.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to running a business, when did it stop being a job and it started being a business?
I think when the acquisition took place, I think we'll say
Yeah.
that one. I think to set the scene, so the acquisition went through on December the 1st, I think it was. It was round about then it
Yes.
took through. And at that point, we all knew internally it happened, but it wasn't going public until January because it was nice and clean at that point. So at that point, I knew I was going to start being the CEO of Flyte. I had a 10-month at home. I had another one who was due in March. So he was coming along as well. So I was already lacking sleep. So that was fine. So at that point, I knew the hard work was about to start because ultimately what happened there was I had a team of 12, had very little recurring revenue in the business, and a fine amount of cash. And that's where I had, right, I know what I can do, I know what I need to do. How do we make it work now? And that's where suddenly it switched from just being a job to actually, right, we now need to run this thing.
Yeah. And with two little kids on to take care of, it's a handful. So, what what do you have to personally have to stop doing, because when we start a business, it's just ourselves, and then you recruit one person, two people, three people. Now you've got 12 people in the team, so it's a business. um, what do you have to stop doing? I'm talking in the context of delegating, because
Okay, and delegating. And I mean, realistically, I before the acquisition took place, I would go out and do things like training. I would go out and do some of the consultancy pieces around about scoping up projects because that's what I liked. That's the kind of thing that I had to stop doing because ultimately at that point, what I was trying to do, sadly, I had to go back in and focus a wee bit more on sales, which is okay. That's what the need of the business was. But what that ultimately meant was I was removing myself a wee bit more from the day-to-day side of things and actually going and looking ahead what's coming in terms of projects, strategy, and all those kind of things. And to do that, beforehand, I had a team of 12 and that's all I had. But to be able to accomplish that, I had to be able to put in a leadership team. So that actually what happened there was you had tech lead covered, you had customer success covered, and you had growth of existing clients covered. So that what I was able to do there is leave the day-to-day stuff over there, and then I could go and focus on new business, on strategy, and those important things to allow us to start keep growing.
yeah, yeah, great. So putting a leadership team in place
Yep.
to dilute the pressure on yourself, right? So,
Yes, which is still there, which is
yeah,
still there, of course. But what I'm trying to do at the moment is look at where 80% of my time is taken up at the moment and then look to
yes,
whether that becomes the next role. And then I remove that from me and
yes.
then all my time fills up again and then I can look again. So yes.
Alistair, what has been the toughest period in your business so far?
Yeah, I would probably say the first 6 months of the business was probably the hardest, mainly because you start normally when you start the business, you have two or three people in it. So you're able to be quite agile, you're able to quite restrictive in what you're offering there. But what we found is because we had those multidisciplinary developers, we were quite set in the path that we had to take. We did have some SaaS products that sat to the side of our main professional services. But what I had to do at that point is I had to say that the SaaS products had to sit to the side because
Uh-huh.
the amount of investment, the amount of marketing, the amount of sales effort that they take to push, we just didn't have the resource, the headspace to concentrate on that. So because I had a fine amount of cash sitting there and I knew I had to concentrate in making sure it worked, I knew professional services was where we had to keep it at. And I had to change my mindset quite quickly from when it was a job to looking at how much revenue am I getting in each month to actually looking at what's my cash flow looking like each month? What am I actually able to invoice each month? And that became probably the most important thing for us.
Mhm.
And that involved looking at things like billing schedules, was probably the most important thing. So actually, it's all very well getting the proposal signed. It's all exciting, but when can I actually get cash in the bank? And
Yeah.
that was kind of one of the fundamental first things that we had to get right. And that was a case of setting up a percentage of a billing profile. So when it got signed, we did get some cash, and then the team were very clear that the milestones that we had to hit through a project to be able to be paid, and that worked. That got us into a situation where that runway was getting longer, and it was getting, I wouldn't say easier because obviously it had ups and downs, and it still does, but um, we're in a far better place than it was in those first kind of 3 to 6 months. So that was probably by far the hardest point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Linked to that, what has been your biggest lesson in hiring or managing people?
Yeah, so I think when the challenges around employing people and managing people, I think the biggest thing is understanding that no two people are the same in terms of they've got so much going on. They've got their own personal lives. I sit here and I'm fully encompassed as CEO of Flyte, but for them it is a job. They have outside factors at play here. So actually being able to understand that and read people's cues and how they're getting on has probably been one of the biggest challenges. I started managing people in August 2019 to be precise, and I had probably about 6 to 8 months there of managing people when we're in an office face to face before COVID hit. And I think to go from that to trying to find how I manage people, understand people, and help people to actually everything going to like this online, you start to forget and you start to miss the micro cues that people are doing when they're not in a good headspace, when they're not having a good day, when they're not enjoying what they're working on. And being able to manage that and being able to pick it up has been difficult. In terms of hiring, I think with the team we have, it's always to make sure that the dynamic's correct so that the people that are coming into the business are going to fit in with the wider one. And that's always very challenging to try and do in an interview process to see whether they'll fit in. Again, I mentioned it before, we're in a sector that's constantly changing, and hiring people and trying to find the right people who are continuing learning and want to learn and are okay with the rate of change in the sector, can also be a wee bit challenging as well.
Yeah.
So to be fair, I've not hired for a wee while so far, but we're about to come into that period as we continue our growth. So these are all the things that I need to start thinking about as we come
Yeah.
through the year.
Brilliant. So on that line, what are your aspirations, plans for the business long term, the next 5 to 10 years? Where would you love to see the business?
I want to. I think growth is obviously a key factor of all of this. We had 12 people. We allowed that to grow up to the point where it can sustain that level. Now, what we're trying to do in the strategy side of things is make sure that we can continue to repeat the services that we offer. And what I mean by that is how do we productize more of the services around what we're doing to grow? That's to bring more recurring revenue into the business. So we want to do that. And ultimately, what we want to do is be that go-to people for offerings around process automation. The thing we have to make sure about is leveraging AI obviously becomes a key part of that. And if you sat here and spoke to me probably 3 years ago and someone mentioned AI, I probably wouldn't be thinking about it necessarily in the business at that point. However, to grow for any business, it's a fundamental service that we have to look at. So that will be a key thing that we will be looking at going into the next couple of years. And it will help us grow. What comes out of that and what the services we offer around those kind of services, we just have to see how it goes and we have to strategize and we have to think what, not guess, I don't like to say that, but we can see some of the issues that are appearing because of AI in businesses. So how do we support that? How do we help companies navigate that path with it? You have a workforce there who are eager to use it because obviously it gives them great efficiency.
Yes.
But when you look at things like cyber, when you look at things like organizational data, we have to be quite careful at organizational level what we're pushing out to the team and the narrative that we're saying to the organization and how it should be used. So there'll be a lot of stuff around that coming about and how we audit that side of things.
Yeah.
So, but for the business, continuing to do process automation, make businesses as efficient as they can be. What's in our toolbox will be the part that changes, and that will allow us to grow.
Brilliant. Now, you earlier on, Alisa, you made that comment. Not two people are the same, and I would like to bring that into context. Do you have a defined culture in the business? And what makes a culture in a business is the values. Values
Yep.
shape the culture, and you made a comment that everybody, or it resonates with everybody. Not two people are the same. Do you have defined sets of values Because as you grow, culture becomes more important. At the
Yeah.
beginning, you are the culture, if you like, you have your values, then you recruit people. When you start recruiting people from different backgrounds, different companies, they bring their own culture. And if you are not intentional on it, then a culture is made up by the employees. Do you have, where are you in your journey in the culture of the business? Do you have a
So
defined
we
culture?
are, is it defined? Probably not as well as it should be at the moment. It's not written on any of our walls, as we say. Um, but when the team is very close, and what I try and do with the team is make sure everyone's comfortable to work with each other. Everyone knows that they can go and use the team to help because no one knows all the answers, and that's okay. And being able to come into a team where everyone feels comfortable to voice when they don't know is a key part of what we do here. Because everyone's working on different projects, everyone comes up against different problems through those projects. And also, they're exposed to different parts of technology. And that can be a great asset to the team as a whole, and how they come about it, how they present to team members, how they ask for help is one of the biggest parts of how I've kind of built this team. And I will always say you're allowed to make mistakes, just get in front of it and let us know as quickly so we can fix it. And that is a culture, that's the start of a culture, I would
Yes.
like to think. And that's where as we start to hire more people, we need to cement those values so that we know, and the people coming into the business know where we sit with it. So again, it's something that we do have to an extent, but I need to refine it and actually put it out there in words per se.
Yeah, because I always say that those values, when you've discovered your values, the values are something you discover, they are inside you rather than taking values from other companies that you look up to. That becomes a filter for recruitment. The
Yep.
people you want to attract the people who have your values and repel those who don't have those values. So it becomes a great filter to get the
Yep.
right people. Brilliant. So just a few rapid fire questions. If nothing comes to mind, just pass if you like.
Okay.
Um, what's the best business advice you've ever received?
Doesn't need to be perfect to get out there. I think that's probably the best thing. I think early in my career, it was all about refining, making this perfect thing, whether that's an offering, whether that's a proof of concept of something you want to do. Just get out there. Just the
Brilliant.
idea is more important.
Yeah, that really resonates. What's the worst advice you ignored?
What's the worst advice I ever ignored? Um, you have to work every dying hour to be successful, I think is probably the biggest one.
Yeah, brilliant. One book every entrepreneur should read.
Now, that's a funny one, actually, because the one I always read, where I started to think I wanted to start a business, it would start with Why by
Simon
Simon
Sinek.
Sinek. And I'm not managing to read many books because between children and bedtime stories and keeping up with tech, that's where most of my reading is. But I'm actually, funnily enough, revisiting that book at the moment because when I read it the first time around, it was very much to do with starting a business and why would I do it? And we've got that in terms of Flyte, in terms of empowering people, elevating organizations. And that was kind of around about the business need to how technology should um, empower people
Yes.
because it's all very well us being so embedded in tech. It's great. We know and understand it. To the end users of most organizations, they just want to get their day-to-day job done. So actually, it's an enabler, and that's where the first time I looked at Start With Why, it was very much in that business sense.
Yes.
But what I'm trying to do, and this is through the CEO side of things, is actually look at more of a personal why why do I manage? What is my style like? All those kind of things. So I'm revisiting at the moment, not from a business side, but actually more of a personal, who am I kind of thing, which is actually quite
Yes,
a difficult one to write
yes,
because you don't necessarily know how people perceive you and how you work.
yes.
But yeah, so I'm in the midst of that and trying to work that one out at the moment.
That's brilliant. You always start with self, and the business is the vehicle to achieve
Yes.
what you
Yeah.
want to achieve in life. Brilliant. What's what's the one habit that made the biggest difference in you building a
When I've been
business?
running a business,
Is there one
I
habit this is well doing that consistently made a difference?
the thing is, there's a lot of flying spinning plates in a business, especially in a startup where you're having to wear multiple hats, do different things, speak to clients, speak to the team about problems. So, and actually, in the grand scheme of things, I am very dyslexic, but that's okay. But one of the habits that I have to do now every morning is I've got my notepad right in front of me here, and I write down the top 5 tasks I have to do today to make a difference in the business. And that's been fundamental. And it keeps me true, it keeps me right, it gives me focus. And sadly, I've tried to do many different online checklist tools, and we've got a checklist tool within Flyte as well. But I think it comes back more to the dyslexia side of things that it has to be written in a book. And paper is key there. And it keeps me focused and it keeps making sure that I move forward
Yes.
there. So
Yeah.
it's more of a habit, on a more personal side of a habit, because obviously the last 2 years has been getting Flyte off the ground, and also having 2 very young kids, making sure I go out for a run, making sure I
Yeah.
get out and do a bit of
Oh,
fitness
you're a
every.
runner. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Good.
yes. So
Good.
started that kind of last year. I've got a half marathon coming up in May for the Edinburgh Half Marathon.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah, this will be the first time that I go do that.
Do you run in the mornings or later on in the day?
Later on in the day, later on in the day.
Okay. I'm a
So
morning person. I'm out there 5:30 in the morning.
I know. Usually at 5:30 in the morning, I'm down playing Paw Patrol or something with the kids. So by
Yes.
the time I get them fed and ready, I have very little time. So
Yes. Yeah.
usually it's after bedtime. Go
Yeah.
out, do 5, 10K, whatever I
Brilliant.
feel fit.
By the way, there is a great book on habits by James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Yep.
And those watching this recording, if you haven't read Simon Sinek's Why, start with Why, there is a 15-minute video in YouTube. I think it's a TED Talk, but it's a 15-minute
I
summary
think it is.
of that. So that's very, very good. Thanks for sharing that. One thing you still struggle with as a leader?
The delegation still sometimes is challenging. I was on it's the whole when someone comes with you with a problem, it would take longer to explain how to do it rather than just taking back control. And that's where I've always struggled. I've got far better and it's still a work in progress. But
Yes,
it is very much a case of spend the time now to get them to understand what you're trying to get to. Because the next time, the third time, the fourth time after that, that's where you save the time.
correct.
And and also what is right for the job. My perfection, potentially it might not be how I would do it, but
Yes,
that's okay. If it's fine for what you need it to be, if it's
yes,
suitable and it's of quality that you would expect it would be suitable, then that's okay.
yeah.
So those are the two wee things. It's like what level's okay, and also the delegation side of
Yes,
things.
that will resonate with a lot of business owners out there. So brilliant. Last question. Do you have any advice for your 18-year-old self?
18-year-old self, probably don't overthink it. I think a lot of the time when I was younger in my early career as well, it was a case of, and it goes back to what I said earlier, everything has to be perfect. I can't start anything until I get this all mapped out, know exactly what I want to do. Actually, it probably caused me a wee bit of stress in my early career because I felt I always had to be further on than I was. Um, so so yeah, I would probably say that for my 18-year-old self.
Brilliant. Well, Alistair, thank you so much for being with us at the Entrepreneur Next Door podcast and for sharing your journey and being so candid and open. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you very much.